your thoughts about, let's start right at the top, the team with the biggest expectations, Texas and Steve Sarkisian.
Yeah, I mean, I have them going over. I think they have about 5 games that are really competitive. If everyone stays healthy, I think they can go 3-2 against an Oklahoma and A&M and Ohio State, Georgia, Florida on the road is going to be a tough one. But I think there's plenty of question marks. I get some who feel like Texas is a little overhyped at number 1 in the nation going in to the season, but I trust in that defense. I think it's an elite unit. I think that offense is going to get better and better as the season goes.
Mike, who are we supposed to bang the under on? Who do you think, like, for sure you've got that right?
I think it's Sam Houston. I typically believe that the G6, you can have a lot of success in kind of the preseason gambling stuff because there's just not as many eyes on that. And Sam Houston wins 10 games last year, almost makes it to the Conference USA Championship, and everybody's high on them. Only year 2 in the FBS. Maybe they're one of those next big programs. But then Casey Keeler, the head coach, leaves and takes the job at Temple. Phil Longo came in, and I think it was a good hire. It was kind of a slam dunk, obvious hire, but it took a while. It was like 22 or 23 days after Keeler left that he was hired, and they lost everybody. I mean, I think they lost their top 16 tacklers from last year, and their defensive coordinator to North Texas. They have a really tough schedule, and they don't play a single home game on campus. Bauer Stadium is getting renovated, so they're playing at Shell Energy in South Houston. So pretty much all games are road games. For the Bearcats this year, a lot of turnover, a new offense. I think they're going to struggle to get to 4.5.
So, Mike, we've talked to you plenty about a lot of these teams, but also specifically about Baylor, and you do have I'll let people read the article, but you do have pretty high expectations for them as they have for themselves. I was curious what you thought about the loss of Dawson Pendergrass. We don't have like a WAR stat like in baseball, and I don't know what his number would be, but it's a loss, and that definitely one that could cost them a game or two potentially when you need that guy to get you a first down late in games. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, not only is it a lot. I mean, yeah, I agree. Like, not having that depth at running back is big. I think everybody looks at the Spavital offense and talks about Sawyer Robinson, but the Baylor football team got better when the run game came alive. And that opened up everything for everybody else. So I think that's super important. But I think it's hard to count on a running back going 12 games and staying healthy. So you're probably going to lose Bryson Washington for a game or two, and now that becomes devastating, right? Like before, if you lose Bryson Washington for a game or two, but you have Dawson Pendergrass, well, maybe you can figure that out. You can keep the train rolling. Not the biggest deal in the world if it's not significant. But with him out for the season and him not being capable of being depth there at number 2, now if you lose a Bryson Washington for a game or two, you got a redshirt freshman and a true freshman as your top 2 running backs, and then that puts everything on Robertson, and then maybe some wheels fall off there. So I think down the line, it could be one of those things we look back on that has a huge impact depending on the health of everybody else around it.
Yeah, this is when you find out about your depth chart. Keenan Hall does a great job recruiting, but not just at the running back position, but 3 very youngins behind Bryson Washington, no doubt about it. All right, TCU, Josh Hoover. It all you hear sometimes we've even had analysts that have said, man, they really like what Sonny Dykes and company have coming back with Hoover, et cetera. And then you have sometimes articles written and you wonder if TCU's somebody even remembers they're playing in the Big 12 or college football. Your thoughts about the Frogs?
I think they're criminally undervalued. I was really surprised when the team totals came out earlier in the spring and it was 6.5, and it stayed pretty steady at 6.5. I mean, it's juiced to the over. So, it seems like the books and the betting public also believe that they're going to get to at least 7 wins. But, if not for Baylor, TCU would have been the hottest team in the state to close the season last year, right? I mean, they won 6 of their last 7, and that one loss was 3 points at Baylor on the road in a really good game. Josh Hoover's back, and a lot of that offense back for year 3 of the Kendall Briles offensive system, and then Andy Avalos on defense is in year 2. Like, I just like the continuity of TCU, head coach in year 4, quarterback in year 3, OC in year 3, DC in year 2. The schedule is tough, though, at least on paper. I think they picked up an extra win with the BYU quarterback situation. That one became a little bit easier, but they play a lot of the big dogs in the Big 12. But who the heck knows, right? Like what the big hard schedule in the Big 12 is going to be. So it's hard to bet on the Big 12 because everything's a coin flip. But I think the Frogs are going to be pretty good. Like maybe not great, but I think that they're going to win 7 or 8.
When you saw the top 25 come out this week and Tech is sitting there between 22 and maybe 19, what did you think about that? Do you think that that's about where they need to start, or do you think that they should be ranked higher, even though that they haven't really proven anything yet?
Yeah, I think it's fair to be lower on them and have them at 21, 22, like somewhere in that range. Like I'm fine with that because you're right. I mean, Texas Tech hasn't proven anything on the field. Their expectations, I've been saying that the ceiling is now the floor. Like what used to be a really good season at Texas Tech would be a disaster this year. They go 8-4, like that's going to be considered a failure. 9-3 may even be talked about as disappointing, depending on how that lies. So. I am fine with the optimism. I personally would have ranked them higher because I look around the Big 12 and I'm a roster talent guy, maybe to a fault. I believe in the blue chip ratio and, stars matter and personnel is kind of the ultimate trump card and stuff. And their roster is just better. Like it's just a better roster than a lot of the other Big 12 teams. Like they're going to have to impact players at positions that a lot of Big 12 programs don't, like along the defensive line and along the offensive line. Baron Morton's health is a thing that needs to be monitored, but every team on this list, you're going to change your bet if the quarterback gets injured. So I like Tech. I would have had them in probably the top 17 or 18. But I get any optimism headed that way because they got to do it on the field, right? Like winning the offseason, doesn't matter if you don't go win in November.
So I know we're talking Texas schools here, but there's a tie-in because one of the reasons why I think a lot of people are high on Texas Tech is all the things we've been talking about, but they have a relatively easy schedule, especially beginning. I mean, Arkansas, Pine Bluff, and Kent State, that might as well be like 200-0, those two games. Oregon State, I mean, who the hell really knows at this point with all they've been through, but that game's in Lubbock, so there's a very strong chance they start 3-0, but then in Game 4, Big 12 starts, and they're in Salt Lake City to take on the Utes. And so my question for you is, are you buying the Utah resurgence in 2025 like a lot of people seem to be?
That's actually something I've been talking with buddies about. I don't quite get the Utah thing. I get betting on that program, betting on that head coach. It punched above its weight in the Pac-12 for a long time, but I'm not sure I buy the quarterback, jumping from and I have the same questions about Oklahoma, to be frank, right? Like playing quarterback at the G6 level is different than playing it at the P4 level. And I don't know if the playmaking ability you can have at that level translates to Utah. And we'll see. I'd imagine the defense is pretty good. They have probably the best pair of offensive tackles in the entire country. Like both of those guys are probably first round pick. So, I mean, they can bully some people. Salt Lake's a hard place to play again. I mean, it's hard to win in Utah. So that's going to be a big one for Texas Tech. But I don't think my Big 12 contender list is Arizona State, Kansas State in tier 1. And then Texas Tech, Baylor, probably tier 2, Iowa State up there as well. I would have Utah in that next group, I think. That's just me, though. I could be wrong.
So, when you hear about all these quarterbacks, and Baron Morton's one of many, 9, I think it is, and with Retzloff now at Tulane, quarterbacks coming back from a year ago, even teams that are not getting much love, like Cincinnati with Sorsby, among others, have returning quarterbacks. What are your thoughts about where Baron Morton is inside the pecking order of the Big 12 alone?
That's a good question. At his best, I think he's a Big 12 championship winning quarterback. Maybe I'm hanging on too much to his Eastland days and what he was as a high school prospect and just what his arm is. But I think he's an uber talented kid. I think he's been better than he gets credit for. He's had some injuries, but he played in 12 games last year. So it's not like he only played in 3 or 4. A lot of Tech quarterbacks got injured there for a while. I'd imagine an improved offensive line helps that. But, I don't think he's somebody that is a future first-round draft pick that has the upside maybe as a Sawyer Robertson or as an Avery Johnson or something like that. But I think you can win the Big 12 with Baron Morton. Maybe we could have an argument on if you can win the Big 12 because of Baron Morton. But I think he's more than good enough. And in the Tech system that they're going to run, I think he's a pretty solid, perfect fit for that if his shoulder's good.
Mike, what do you think about what you've seen maybe in some of these practice videos from Marcel Reed and KC Concepcion and A&M maybe having a prolific offense this year?
To me, it's the biggest question in the state. Arch Manning gets a lot of the publicity, and Texas Tech's off season obviously spilled a lot of ink in the media circles the last few months. But Texas A&M on paper should be an SEC contender. Their top 7 offensive linemen come back, probably the best rushing attack in the SEC with Le'Veon Moss. The defense should be a lot better in year 2 with Mike Elko, especially if that secondary improves with him calling plays. It all comes down to the quarterback. Like I've said all offseason, you tell me you tell me your projection for Texas A&M in 2025. I'll tell you what you think of Marcel Reed. Like it all comes down to what you think he is as a player, as a passer. I do trust that Colin Klein can run an offense that hides that. I mean, after all, Colin Klein was the same type of quarterback, so I'd imagine, and he went to the Heisman, trophy final. So I mean, he knows what to do here. I think it's going to look a lot like a Kansas State offense. But they play at LSU, they play at Notre Dame, they play at Texas, they play at home against Florida, home against South Carolina, they play Auburn. Like, there's going to be 3 or 4 games where Marcel Reed has to throw you to a win. And I'm just not sure he can do that. I mean, if he can, I think Texas A&M smashes the over and, might be a 12-team college football playoff team. But if he's not, they could be a 6-6, 7-5 team with that roster, with that schedule.
Yeah, and this is not, we haven't seen enough of him, but I remember when he first came in to gave A&M a spark, and they needed that. Wigman wasn't working out. Not that he was bad, but and he gave him a spark, and he threw a couple of passes, and I didn't know if he could really do that. And I think he throws a pretty ball. I just wonder if he gets lost in the forest.
And my concern is, the more tape defenses had on him, the worse he did.
Mm-hmm.
Like they went 0-4 against Power 4 teams in the last month of the season. And in weeks in which the other defense knew Marcel Reed was the starting quarterback, he didn't perform as well. I mean, his biggest games were, that Florida game was good, and that was early in the year when I don't think anybody had tape on him. And then he comes in second half of LSU and lights the world on fire with his legs. But he's going to have to do it week in and week out with the other defense taking away the things that he does well and forcing him, to do some stuff that maybe he isn't as comfortable with. I mean, he had the whole offseason being the starter, and I'd imagine that helps a lot. And he could come out there and be, lights out and play excellent and, all that kind of stuff. But to your point, I think you got to see it, especially in that league. Like, it's a big time quarterback year in the SEC, and I'm not sure Marcel Reed is in the top half of that conversation.
Mike Craven with us, covers college football from throughout the state. You mentioned Sam Houston State early. What about a UTEP or a North Texas, Incarnate Word, Texas State? Who and Incarnate Word's ranked like 4th or 5th in the country in the FCS. Who in your UTSA with Traylor? Who in your opinion out of that group is probably going to have the better season?
For the best season, I'll take UTSA just because I think they have the best quarterback. Owen McCown, by the end of the year last year, was one of the best quarterbacks in the G6. And you just don't keep those guys anymore, right? Like, if you have a quarterback like that at that level, they're typically playing Power 4 football the next year. But he stayed. The McCowns and the Trailers go back, as 30 years to East Texas. They've been playing a lot of pickup basketball together for a very long time, and I think that relationship really helped the Roadrunners keep them. That offense is going to be really good. They have to get better defensively. But that Week 2 game against Texas State is going to be huge. I think that's going to determine the best G6 team in the state. If you're looking for kind of a surprise dark horse type team, I think I would go with North Texas. I really like UTEP's schedule, so if they have a good year, I wouldn't be surprised. But North Texas, with Eric Morris there, they've been able to score points. Like, they've had top 15 scoring offenses both years he's been there, but they've had top 15 worst defenses the 2 years they've been there. They hired a new defensive coordinator in Skylar Cassidy, who was at Sam Houston last year. A really good defensive coordinator, a young guy. He's like 32 years old. I think he's one of the rising stars in the industry. If the defense just gets average, the North Texas offense stays as good as it's been. I think, the Mean Green can really surprise some people in the AAC. They don't play Memphis. They don't play Tulane. So they got a chance to make some real noise, I think, in that conference.
Mike, you're doing a great job, man. Appreciate it. Mike Craven with his Dave Campbell's Texas Football Magazine. Anything else?